Hey everybody! So last week we learned some basic cutting skills. This week I want to teach you guys another basic skill. These are all just kind of fundamentals to cooking. So if you know how to do these basic things, then you're going to be able to look at a recipe and put it together once you know some of these basics. So today we're going to learn about pasta, just regular basic pasta, how to boil it correctly, how to cook it. We're going to go over that whole process and then go over just a couple of things that you can do to make a meal out of noodles. So here we go. Okay, so the first step of cooking noodles is to boil the water. So I'm using this big pot right here. I'm using a large pot because I have a big family, so I'm cooking a lot of noodles. If you are cooking less noodles, like just for yourself or just for you and one other person, you can use like a medium-sized pot, but I wouldn't advise using a tiny pot, especially if you're cooking like long noodles. Like today we're doing spaghetti noodles. So if you're ever cooking those kinds of noodles, it's better to have either a medium or a large pot so you can make sure you have enough water and that your noodles aren't overflowing and your water isn't boiling over. So as far as deciding how much water to put in, the idea is that you want to have the water be able to cover the noodles completely. You want to have plenty of water. It's better to have too much water than not enough water. If you don't have enough water, and you put a lot of noodles in there and the water isn't covering the noodles all the way, then your noodles might not cook all the way, or they'll get really sticky or soggy. So you can just kind of guess from the beginning how much water. You never want to like fill it up all the way to the top because then it will boil over when you do add the noodles. So that's why it's important to decide what kind of pot you want to use. So if we were going to use the small one, we wouldn't fill water all the way up to here. We'd kind of fill it maybe like 3/4 of the way. I would say half to 3/4 of the way. And then you would end up using less noodles when you add them. So I'm going to boil the water, and another trick that I like to do, which isn't mandatory, is adding some oil. So I like to add a little bit of oil. It kind of helps give a little bit of flavor, and it helps break up the noodles. It keeps them from sticking. So I also like to add a little bit of salt, but I'm not going to do that part today, but you can, that's another option. So you can either add nothing and just boil the water, or you can add oil and salt, or just one or the other. It's kind of up to you. So I'm going to turn this on like medium to high. So that's going to make your water boil fast. Alright guys, now that our water is boiling, we are going to now add in the pasta. What I like to do when I'm doing spaghetti and linguine noodles or any other long noodles is we're going to break them in half. So you're going to take a small chunk from the box, you're going to put your hands on it like this, and you're going to break it. If you break it like this, your pasta is going to fling up everywhere. You want to break it down into the water. So like I said, I have a big family, so I am using this whole entire big box. If you're just cooking like for yourself, then you can probably get away with just cooking like a half a box. And if it's the same if you're doing a different kind of noodle, like elbow. Okay, so now that I've broken it all in, this is the type of spatula that you want to use. It has the dips in it, and this is something that can kind of grasp onto your noodles. So you're going to stir these around. It's really important right after you dump them all in to stir it all around, so that way they aren't sticking to each other right away. So you're just going to give it a little bit of stir, get that in there and mix it around. You really want to get the spoon in there, and then we're going to let it boil again. So this time when we let it boil, we don't want to have it high. This time we're just going to put it on medium, like even like halfway between the low and the medium. My stove goes low 4 and 6. Some go like medium and high. So medium's a good one to put it at for them to cook at. If you turn the stove up too high, then your noodles might not turn out the right way because they'll cook too fast. The water will drain too fast, and then the noodles won't be cooked all the way before you're out of water. So it's important to keep it at medium. Okay, so the way that you want to stir this is you want to just stir it occasionally. You don't have to sit here and constantly stir it the whole time. You can put your spoon down and then you can kind of walk away for a minute and come back to it. So the way that you tell if the noodles are done is you want them to be what's called al dente. Al dente means that they're about 2 minutes away from being completely cooked. The reason for that is because when you go and put them into the strainer and you rinse them off with water, they are still going to be cooking that whole time. So you want to give that a little bit of time. So they don't have to be completely all the way done. So my mom used to teach me when I was little that the right way to tell if noodles were cooked all the way was to throw it against the wall, and if it sticks, it's done. However, even though that's really fun, if you do that and it sticks to the wall, then they're probably overcooked at that point. So it's important to do al dente. What they're gonna do, what it's gonna be is they're gonna taste kind of firm. So it's not going to be hard and crunchy, but it's not going to be super soft. It's going to be just a little bit firm. Okay, so I took a quick noodle out to taste. You need to be really careful if you take it out to test it because it's really hot. So you can grab a fork separately and you can just pull one little noodle out to taste. It's still pretty crunchy. So we're going to give it a little bit longer. Okay, so I just tasted the pasta again and it is al dente now. So the next step is we are going to put it in the strainer to drain. Okay, so now that it's boiling, it's important to turn off the stove before you take it off. So I turned off the stove. We're going to walk it over. This is the part where you need to use these handles and don't touch the outside because it's very hot. Okay. Okay, so this is how you drain the noodles. You slowly pour them into the strainer. Then you kind of take the two handles and you can move it around like this. Now, this is an important step. If you are using the noodles for a hot dish right away, then, okay. So yeah, like I said, if you are using the noodles for a hot dish, then you do not want to rinse them with cold water. You just drain them and put them back into the pan. If you're using it for a cold dish, like a pasta, like a pasta salad, or for me, I'm going to be using these noodles to make chicken spaghetti, which is something that I'm going to be putting in the oven later. So I'm going to rinse them with cold water just so you guys can see what it looks like. But again, if you're using them right away, you don't want to rinse them with cold water because it takes out all the yummy starch of the noodles and it kind of makes it taste a little bit different. So the idea is to not rinse it with cold water. Okay, so when you do rinse it, you just kind of spin it around. You can grab your spatula and stir it through if you want, just to kind of get it all in there. You can use the spray.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Now, so I just showed you what it would be if you were using it for something cold. But now we're going to rewind a little bit and go back to pretend like this was, I didn't rinse it with cold water and that we did it hot. The reason for that is because I want to show you the trick that I use when I'm making noodles. I add butter and garlic salt to my pot and then I dump the noodles back in. So with this amount of noodles, you see how on butter they have the tablespoons on there? So each little dash is 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. For a lot of noodles like this, I like to use a lot of butter because it gives it really good flavor. So I'm going to use like 2 tablespoons of butter. So I'm going to cut right here. I'm going to cut off that. And I'm going to pour the butter in here. Then I'm going to take the pot back to the stove. Okay, so I'm going to turn the stove back on to low. This is just for me to have the butter melted a little bit. And so this is just what I like to do. You don't have to make your noodles like this, but this is just how I get the good flavor. So I kind of let the butter mix around. You can kind of lift it up and kind of shake it around like this to get the butter all around the bottom. And then I also put a little bit of garlic salt in there. Even if you're using this for a pasta dish like spaghetti or Alfredo, it's still okay to season it with salt and pepper. I like using garlic salt, but you can use any type. Okay. So we're going to kind of let that melt for a second. Now, because I do it this way, I grab my noodles off of the strainer, and after this melts a little bit, I bring it back over and I dump the noodles in. Okay, so I want you to remember when you bring this pot back over here for the second time, if you do this butter technique, it's hot, so be very careful. You just grab both hands on the strainer and you just dump the noodles in. Now, I'm just going to leave this right here, but you can take this back to the stove. And then you just kind of stir the butter in. And since the butter's already melted, it's going to easily be distributed all through your noodles. Okay, now, as you guys know, you can use pasta for a lot of things. So if you are just trying to make a simple dish out of the ingredients that you already have in your home, there's a couple of different things you can do. You can add just some cheese, and if you do it while it's still hot, then it will kind of melt on its own. So you can use shredded cheese, you can use chunks of cheese and just kind of stir it in. You can, so you know, you would pour a couple of scoops into a bowl and then add cheese. That's one little just cheesy buttered noodles. You can add any vegetable, so you could do like a can of green beans, you could add some green beans in there, you could do broccoli, you could do carrots, whatever you feel like to add a little bit of vegetable. You could also do meat. There's this one that I make when I am just trying to make a quick meal, where I add hamburger meat. I cook hamburger meat and add it in there with green beans and soy sauce, and that is also really good. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with just pasta. You can look up any pasta recipe and just add in. You can add in whatever sauce you find around the house. You can do just butter noodles with cheese, as I said. So that is all for today.